If you're standing in front of your computer wondering whether a high-end webcam is worth the upgrade, the real question is, who is this actually good for, who should skip it, and is it worth the price for normal everyday buyers? That hesitation is exactly what I felt before I dug into the Elgato Facecam 4K, and I spent a few evenings testing it in the kind of scenarios most of us actually live through: Zoom calls, Twitch streams, and a quick interview for a client project. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of people who will get the most mileage out of this camera. If you already produce video content a few times a week, whether it's gaming streams, tutorial videos, or remote presentations that need a professional look, the Facecam's 4K 60 uncompressed feed makes a noticeable difference. The extra resolution lets you crop a little in post without the picture turning mushy, and the HDR support helps keep skin tones natural when you're sitting near a bright window. For a hobbyist who's still learning the ropes, the built-in camera hub software gives you a playground of color grading, exposure tweaks, and even cinematic effects without having to open a separate editing suite. In short, anyone who treats their webcam as a primary visual tool will feel the upgrade. On the flip side, if your webcam usage is limited to occasional family video calls or quick check-ins with coworkers, you're probably better off with a cheaper 1080p model. The Facecam doesn't have an internal microphone, so you'll need a separate mic or a headset to get decent audio, and that extra purchase adds to the total cost. Also, if you're on a tight budget, the $199 price tag feels steep for a device that still relies on a USB-C connection to a fairly powerful computer. You'll need a machine that can handle a steady 4K 60 stream without dropping frames, otherwise the promise of Ultra HD clarity turns into choppy video. Now, let's break down how the camera behaves in real-world conditions. I set it up on a basic tripod in a room lit only by a desk lamp, then switched to a well-lit kitchen where natural light poured in through a window. In the bright kitchen, the autofocus locked on instantly, tracking my movements as I leaned forward to point at a whiteboard. The focus was razor-sharp, and the colors looked vivid enough that I didn't have to reach for a post-production color correction. In the dim lamp scenario, the autofocus still found me, but it took a couple of seconds to settle, and the HDR algorithm introduced a slight halo around my shoulders. It wasn't terrible, but if you regularly broadcast from low-light rooms, you'll probably want to add a ring light or an external LED panel. One of the standout practical features is the 49mm lens filter thread. This isn't just a gimmick, it lets you screw on a neutral density filter to tame a sunny window behind you, or a polarizer to cut glare when you're filming a product demo. I tried a cheap ND filter I already had, and the difference was immediate. My exposure stayed consistent even when the sun shifted a few degrees. The downside is that you have to buy those filters separately, and the market isn't flooded with cheap, high-quality options, so it adds another expense if you need precise lighting control. Ease of use is another area where the Facecam shines for the right audience. Plug the USB-C cable into a Mac or Windows PC, launch the Camera Hub app, and you're presented with a clean interface that lets you toggle HDR, adjust exposure sliders, and apply a few preset looks like cinematic or vlog. The software does have a learning curve. Some of the deeper color wheels aren't labeled with beginner-friendly terms, and you'll spend a few minutes figuring out what lift versus gamma does. But once you get past that, you can save custom profiles and switch between them with a click, which is a huge time saver when you're juggling multiple streaming setups. Stabilization, however, is something the Facecam simply doesn't provide. It's a fixed-focus webcam, so any shake from a desk or a wobbly tripod will be visible, especially at 4K. If you plan to move around a lot, say, standing up to demonstrate a physical product, you'll need a more robust rig or a separate gimbal. For most static desk setups, a solid tripod does the trick, but it's worth noting that the camera itself isn't trying to compensate for motion. Battery confidence isn't a concern here because the camera draws power directly from the USB-C port, which means you never have to worry about a dead battery midstream. That also eliminates the need for a charging cable or a power brick on your desk.